Hello and welcome to the Kuriaknits podcast. My name is Erin and I'm so glad that you've joined me here today. I am coming to you from Southern Ontario where it's a nice 30 sweaty degrees and I've got my dog sitting beside me. I don't think he wants to say hi at the moment, but yeah, it's a beautiful summer day when I'm dreaming for fall, but that is a-okay. This video is 3 weeks after my last podcast. I try to keep it to 2 weeks, but it has been just wild over here. I have been prepping for my exams. I am a PhD student in history and we have big exams in the first months of our second year in the program to basically ensure that we're going to continue in the program, so they're a really big deal. I still feel really underprepared. This summer has very much gotten away from me. Some of my fields went a little late. And then I was in New Haven and then I got very sick and I continued to be pretty sick. And then we had this huge work event which basically took all my time and is still taking a lot of my time. So I just feel like I really haven't gotten any time to study, and it's in about 2.5 weeks. So I'm really hoping I can hunker down in the next 2.5 weeks. So that is to say, this might be the last video for another 3 weeks, just because I really need to turn my attention and focus on that, as much as I would rather be knitting. So while this is 3 weeks worth of knitting, I would assume that it's probably will feel like 2 weeks worth of knitting, just because I haven't been able to knit as much as I'd like to be knitting. So I hope that you are getting a lot of knitting done wherever you are, that time has slowed down a little bit for you in this fall season. I'm really hoping by the time I am back in the swing of things, it will be cool. I will not be in my house sweating. I had to close the windows. We've kind of had our aircon off just because we figure at night it's cooling down so much that it's been keeping the house decently cool, but the next few days look like scorchers, so I think we're just going to have to deal with it. But lucky, I have a new FO to keep me cool. At long last, I have finished the Moonset Tee by Ozetta, and I'll just show you, peek the blue. This is made in Knitting for Olive pure silk, and it is made up in 3.25 millimeter needles, so it is quite an arduous knit. It reminds me a lot of the Cumulus tee. I think it's an excellent alternative if you want more of a pronounced neckline here. And it's got like sloped shoulders here. It's so light and airy, it almost feels like you're not even wearing anything, which makes it perfect for the summer weather. And I'm so glad to have it off the needles, honestly. It was a arduous knit for me. I found my hands definitely cramped up on the smaller needles. But that said, I actually really love it. I think I'll be making another in cotton. As much as I'd love to have another one in silk, I feel like this silk reveals all of your sins. I'll show you kind of in here. It's a little stretched out from the way that I did this binding here. And it just shows everything. I also found, I've worn this a couple times and the silk will pull a little bit. And so I had some threads that I had to figure out how to deal with on like the first day of wearing it, just from daily life. So I feel like this shirt is a little fragile, and I think I would feel a lot better about the time that I'd went into it if it was a cotton and a little bit heavier wearing. That said, like, so unbelievably light and airy. I didn't do anything to finish the sleeves. I ran out of yarn is mostly why, but the original pattern has sleeves that you kind of bring down to your elbow, but I feel like it's boxy enough that it settles on my arm in a place that I actually prefer. I would like to maybe finish them up with a crocheted hem just to close in the hole a little bit more, but I'm happy with the way it looks. I'm not like, I don't look at it and feel sad. And in the bottom, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how I wanted to end this thing off. So I'll show you, I just did a small little bit of ribbing, and I initially wanted to do the suggested bind off, which is a tubular bind off, but I found it was rolling too much, and I knit this a bit shorter than I otherwise would have because I ran out of the blue yarn. That's a whole other thing. Last time you saw the shirt, I think it was still striped. So I initially was going to, I'm trying to use scrap yarn. I was initially going to do this gray, light gray color, and then with stripes of blue and yellow. That's what I had in Knitting for Olive pure silk. But I thought after doing some stripes that the yellow was too warm for the palette. The blue is obviously very cool toned. This gray is a very cool toned, very light gray. And I thought that this gray and the yellow were clashing just a little bit too much. I think maybe if I had done the gray and then a blue panel and then a yellow panel, it might have looked okay, but I think I got far enough along in the blue that I'm happy with where it turned out. And it sits just at my hips. It just hits my hips. And I wear almost all high-waisted pants, so that's perfectly fine for me. But most people have made theirs a lot longer. I made this out of 2 3/4 skeins. So it's 2 full skeins of this color and a 3/4 skein of the blue. And I found that it worked okay for me. I made it in the size, I think the size 2. No, I think the size 4. I think I made it in the size 4, but I did have to amend the pattern because although I kit gauge, my row gauge was fine, or my stitch gauge was fine, my row gauge was very tall. And someone's doing construction, so I'm sorry if you can hear that. Yeah, my row gauge was very tall, and so I was trying to figure out what on earth I would do about that. And I just had to amend the pattern. So Ozetta often gives how many rows you're supposed to do and then gives the amount of inches. I just made sure to follow the inches and not the rows, and it turned out okay for me. But the bind off, so I just ended up doing a ribbed bind off because it was very easy and simple to do. I knew how much yarn I would use up, and although I think the folded bind offs look best on what other people have done, I don't think I would have had enough of the blue yarn, and I considered binding off in the yellow and having that peak at the very bottom, but just decided I was done with this shirt. And honestly, the bind off doesn't bother me in the slightest. It really, after blocking, kind of flattened out. At first, the bind off was looking a little bit bulky. I did go down. I think I went down to 2.75, so 2 needle sizes, and I think it worked out fine. It's now very flat. It lays really nicely. It doesn't really roll all that much in the sleeves at all, which is really nice to see, and it doesn't roll at the bottom either. So I think it's fitting really, really great. Yeah, and I think it'll work really well. The only other note I'll say is that this shirt tends to want to slip up. So the neckline creeps as I'm wearing it up to here. But if you look in the sample, that's where the neckline is supposed to sit. And I think because my stitches were so tall, it sits a bit lower, which I actually really like. I like this neckline for myself, but I think because it was constructed to sit higher on the neck, it just naturally wants to do that as its construction. The shoulders want to sit back further, and then the front creeps up. So I think to account for that, it would naturally want to have some space in the back instead of at the front. And it's just not long enough to accommodate that, so I'm constantly pulling it forward. And for that reason, it's not like a top tier knit for me. I think it's beautiful, but I think the constraints that I was working under just meant that I needed to make amendments, and the pattern wasn't necessarily made to do that, and I didn't know how to cater for the shirt wanting to slip back on my body. I think it's fine. I don't think it's gonna bother me all that much, but something to note if you're making similar modifications to your pattern, I think you can get this done with a lot less yarn. I saw some people using up to 7 skeins of the Knitting for All of Your Silk. I think if you're around my size, probably 4 would be your safe place if you want the sleeves especially, and if you are someone that has a bit more length in your body. I very much benefited for this knit specifically from being a short human, and yeah, I'm really pleased with the way that this turned out. And I think I will make another one. I was looking at the pattern for the PetiteKnit version of this shirt. She has a very similar one, Cumulus top, Cumulus blouse. She has so many in that family. Cumulus shirt. I don't know which one is like this, but there's a t-shirt version. I was looking at that one and I was like, for my next one, do I want to try one of those? Do I want to stick with this? And honestly, I think I'll stick with this. I think I like the neckline on this one a lot better, especially if I can find a way to pull it down and keep it from slipping back. So I don't love it as much if it's supposed to sit up here, but I do like it the way that it's sitting on me. So if I can figure out how to do that without it wanting to slip back all the time, I think that that is my ideal fingering weight t-shirt. And I do have some of the Kea cotton, the little balls. They kind of look like Christmas ornaments. I had picked up some in a beautiful forest green when I was in England. And so I have those sitting and waiting for me when I'm ready to cast on a shirt. I actually think it might be a winter project for me. The color is very Christmassy, wintry to me, so I think it'll be good. And at some point, I imagine I will be craving a lighter gauge project. That is not me at the moment, but I think I could get there again. So I remember last spring, all I wanted to do was to cast on summer t-shirts and to enjoy a little bit of summer knitting. And now I am in the exact opposite mood, to the point where I was looking at my knitting the other day and I was like, you know what? What if I just stopped all of it and cast on all new things? And that would be chaotic. But I did consider. I was looking at patterns in Ravelry, and let me know if you ever had that feeling, because I woke up and chose chaos. I did cast on. I have 2 new cast-ons to show you in my whips, and neither of them are from our Christmas gifts. My last video I was talking about what I'm going to be gifting, and everyone was saying it is an ambitious year, and I agree. And I am not starting. Yeah, I've started one, and I will show you that. But yeah, I'm making poor decisions for myself is basically what I'm saying. But why don't we start with things that you've already seen, and let's start with the test knits that I am working on. So this first test knit, I have not done a lot of progress on it since the last time you saw it. But I am loving the way it's turning out, and it is the Pippin sweater by the Knit Purl girl. I am testing this sweater, and I thought the deadline was like a week from now, at the end of September, and it's actually at the end of October. So this has kind of fallen off my must knit like rotation. I usually have a rotation as I'm heavily knitting on a few items, lightly knitting on a few other items. This has kind of fallen onto the lightly knitting because I had did all of this in maybe like all of the increases in maybe a week and a half. And then in the 3 weeks, I've basically just done here to here, not much. But I think I'm about 3/5 done the body, maybe. I'm going to do it, I think, a full length for me. I am maybe halfway down the second skein, and I'm going to use the whole second skein on the body. And then if I'm not done the body to where I would like, I'm gonna put on hold, make sure I get the sleeves done all the way, and then use what's left to make the rest of the body. I am knitting it in this Jagger spun. It is a sport weight yarn. It is from their mainline wool. It's 100% wool, 332 yards, and I have 4 of these. And this was from my trip out to New Haven. I got it at, I always forget the name of this stupid store. It's one word. They have the URL yarn.com. It'll come to me, but I got it there in their big warehouse. It was a really delightful time. So you can check out that video if you want to see what else I got, but that means that it'll be a little bit more difficult for me to get more. And this thing keeps floating that way. Let's keep it there. But I am loving the way this turns out. It has a scrumptious texture, really easy to knit, but I am just finding myself not wanting to purl, like at all. I'm just kind of sick of it. And so this has definitely taken a little bit of a spot on the back burner, although I am so excited to have the finished project. This wool is kind of my perfect wool. I would love to get more of it. It is just the right balance between being hardy, but not too rough. I think it would feel fine next to skin, and I just love this design as well. I would definitely make it again. I really like the way this neckline's done. I'm not usually one for one stitch raglans, but I actually love the way this is turning out. And I can definitely see myself knitting this again. I'm always at a bit of a loss for sport weight patterns, and I've avoided buying sport weight yarn because of that. And this yarn is suited to a light DK or a heavy sport weight, depending on if you are more of a light looser knitter or a tighter knitter. I'm more of a looser knitter, so I went with the sport. And I love the density of this fabric. It is turning out so well. It's not see-through, but it's actually pretty light. The yarn is going a really long way. And so I can definitely see myself picking up some more sport weight, especially if I can get it done with 4 skeins. This price of the sweater will be like $20, which is pretty incredible for a 100% wool sweater. So yeah, and the shaping is so intentional as well. I just love Sophie's designs and I'm so excited to be testing this. But yeah, hopefully I'll at least have the body done for next time. I'll probably have to kick it into high gear, put it back into the priority list soon-ish. But for now, I'm enjoying just kind of staring at it on my desk. I don't really put things in project bags. I just have things in like piles everywhere, which might sound like a nightmare, but then I can see what I'm working on. It's in the project bag. I'm not remembering it. For example, my sweater number 15 has been sitting in a project bag. I haven't touched it. It's not that I don't want to work on it, it's that I'm just working on other things. And I think if it was not in the project bag, I probably would have reached for it by now, but I didn't. So this just works for me. Anyways, when the sweater comes out, I will absolutely let you guys know, and I would very highly recommend it. I love it. I've tried it on already and it's fitting so, so well. I think I'm knitting the size 5 for this one. This next knit is my other test knit, and it is the Lucy Blouse. Oh my gosh, mohair everywhere. The Lucy Blouse by Knitting Deer. It looks like this. It is almost done. I am just finishing up this last sleeve here. Let me see if I can get like a better view. So it basically has this open neckline that crosses over in the front, and kind of when you're holding it up, it doesn't do it justice because you cannot see the beauty of the neckline crossing. So I've done quite a bit since the last time you guys saw this. I finished the sleeve. So I don't actually know what that marker is doing there. Well, I finished the sleeve. So it looks like this. It tapers down really nicely. And it's just a big, full, fluffy sleeve. I also added some length on the ribbing at the bottom. So it goes from half fisherman's rib up here to a full just 1x1 rib at the bottom, and then it goes down a needle size as well. I actually went down from a 4 to a 3, so I went down quite a lot of needle size, but I really like the way that tapers. And I'm just finishing up this last sleeve here, and it is due next Wednesday. So this pattern should be coming out very shortly if you are interested. It holds 3 strands of mohair together, and so it is just a little fluff ball. And last time I was talking about this, I was talking about wanting to shave it, and I did. So right here, you can see a place that I missed shaving it. Look how long that mohair strands are. It was so fluffy, and I shaved it, and I think it looks 10 times better. The stitch definition is a lot better. It's a lot more wearable. I also shaved the inside of the sweater so that the mohair wasn't on my skin as much, and honestly, it's changed the garment for me. I think it's a lot more wearable, a lot better. In just every way, I am a lot happier with it. Maybe actually I can put it on because I'm just working on the sleeve right now and show you what it's looking like. I steam blocked everything but the sleeve that I'm working on. The one thing I will say is that my gauge definitely changed while I was knitting, and I just could not go under 4mm needles for this fisherman's rib because it was meant to be in 5mm needles, and somehow the thought of going down to like a 3.5, I was like, I can't do it. But this is kind of what it would look like. Obviously ignore this, but it goes down to the ribbing at the bottom. And I think the sleeves are my favorite part, and they also have this cool background at the back that's really flattering. So I think if I were to make it again, I would probably go down a size just because I'm a loose knitter and I could not get my gauge. It matched in my swatch, but I'm realizing as I knit it, I must have loosened up. So I knit it in a size 4, and I would probably go down to a size 3. I also knit it a bit shorter, which is has instructions for it in the pattern. So that's not a problem. Only just like a tad, but I actually did knit the full length to be able to get measurements for the test so that I can get a proper weight for her, and then shorten it again. So yeah, that's what that's looking like. I think it's turned out really well. The shaving process was a little bit difficult. So what I did was I went to the store looking for a shaver. I just went to the drugstore, And I was looking for like a men's electric razor, and I actually ended up, excuse me, finding a, I don't know if there's a way to put this delicately, a women's sanitary shaver. So to shave down there for women, it was an electric battery powered shaver, and it worked great. It was obviously unused, and I will be using it just to shave my knits from now on, and it worked excellently. I just need to be careful, so I couldn't use the guard on it. If I used the guard on it, I found the yarn was just getting stuck in it. It doesn't have enough structure to it to be able to hold on and get snipped. So I had to take the guard off, and it is possible to snip right through your yarn. So you do have to be very careful when you're using it. It happened maybe twice, and I had to tie up those pieces and fix them and mend them, which is annoying, but I'm glad that I did it because it's ultimately transformed this object. This I am knitting in 2 cones of mohair that I'm doing 3 strands, but I have 2 cones of this mohair that I picked up in Value Village, and they look like this. And if you ever question, this is the fluffiest mohair you have ever seen. It's wild, but it's got such a beautiful color. I was a little worried about the way that the rainbow tones would come out, but I think once it's knit up, it really melts into itself a little bit. And I'm really in love with it. And as you can see, I'm going to have a ton of yarn left over. I've got 2 of these. So I don't know what else I'm going to do with it. Probably more sweaters, who knows? But how many sweaters can you have in the same yarn? I don't know. And it's not even something that I could like gift to someone. Maybe I could gift the cone to someone who also knits, but I couldn't make a gift knit out of just mohair for someone. I feel like that's a fabric that you kind of gotta want to wear because it's stupidly fluffy and not everyone wants that in their life. It's also a color that not everyone would like in their life. So I have a feeling that these are gonna sit in my stash for a long time to come, but I'm so glad that I could find a test that was able to use up some of this lovely mohair that I found and thrifted. And hopefully I can find other reasons to use it up in the future. Even if I'm not making garments that are particularly wearable, I've really enjoyed the process of this knit. I love half fisherman's rib. I will say though, these sleeves feel like they've taken a lifetime, because with half fisherman's rib, every single stitch is actually 2 stitches. And so although this sleeve is only 40 stitches, it's actually like 80 rounds, or 80, it's only 40 rounds. It's actually 80 rounds, round and round and round and round in rib. And that just, it feels like you're making no progress ever. And they're quite like fluffy. I think each sleeve is 60 or 70 something stitches. So it's huge. It's just, they feel like they go on forever. I feel like these sleeves are taking longer than even the body did. There's not a lot of interest to them. You're not making increases or decreases. So it just feels like you're going on and on and on and on. And I'll do a whole TV show's worth of knitting and I'll look down and it looks like you haven't made it anywhere. So I would definitely recommend using progress keepers if you are making a fisherman's rib sweater and you're on the sleeves. I think you need it mentally to be able to carry on with the project and to stay inspired. But luckily I have a deadline to keep me inspired, and I really need to get going on that sleeve because the sleeves definitely take the longest, and I don't know how much time I will have in the next couple of days to have a marathon knitting session. So yeah, and also that's not where my creative energy, like my creative mind is not thinking about this project, and that also makes it difficult to want to knit on it. So yes. Lots of hindrances, but it's just one of those things that I'm gonna have to power through. And I'm sure once it's blocked and ready to go, I will thank myself for it. But it is a lovely test knit, and I will hopefully be able to say that it is out very soon. This next knit was just a baby when you had last seen it. I had just cast it on and I have not done, I'm somehow in the middle of a row. So that's just lovely. I haven't done a ton more on it, but I'm definitely further than I was last time. And it is the balloon cardigan by PetiteKnit. So you can kind of see the increases going on there. And yeah, you know what? It's the same on the other side. Just imagine this, but double. That's how you podcast, right? You just say, imagine it. But yeah, I think I'm going to be obsessed with this sweater once I have it in my hands. This material is to die for. I just feel this sweater sometimes. I've had it on my desk for a while and I find myself just petting it a little bit. Yes. The only amendment that I've made to this pattern so far is that I did a double raglan instead of a single stitch raglan. And I don't think it's really changed the pattern all that much. But yeah, I really love this pattern so far. I am not planning to do the balloon sleeves. I'm planning to just do straight down sleeves. But yeah, I'm still working on the yoke. So there's still lots and lots to go. I don't think I realized, I obviously cast it on and did realize, but it's in 3.5 millimeter needles. And I think that's the thing that's making this fabric so unbelievably scrumptious. But at the same time, I was like, oh, I finally cast on a cardigan and I put it in the smallest needles that you could probably make a cardigan in. I mean, I know you could make it in smaller needles, but what was I thinking? I was definitely craving a thicker needle, and you'll see that for my next 3 FOs. I think they're all on thicker needles, but I think for that reason, I haven't been knitting on this as much, just because when I'm not working on these 2, which are also, one's on 4, one's on, no, they're both on 4. They're both on 4 millimeter needles. I don't want to go down a size, so I don't find myself reaching for it quite as often, but again, I'm sure I will want to reach for it again. I am using Knitting for Olives cotton, no, wool, the thinner wool, and this is in the color Marzipan, and I'm holding it with the mohair. I'm holding it with the mohair. I'm holding it with it in the color Kit/Putty. And they look like this together. And I could have gone for 2 of the same color, but I thought this very minor contrast on these would look really nice together. And I'm really pleased with my choice because I do think they look nice together. So I would definitely make a sweater in this combination again. I got this at their flagship store in Copenhagen, and it was a bit of a treat to myself. So I think next time I'm wanting to treat myself with some more luxurious yarn, this is a combination that I would definitely consider making a sweater out of. I really, really love the combination. It is making such a luxurious sweater together. This next whip is a gift knit. So if you're my family, please click to the next one. But this is for my mom, and she had requested a blanket. And I had talked about this in my gifting video, but I am doing the Purl Soho rectangular bias blanket, and this is how far I've gotten so far. And I think it's lovely. She had said that she had wanted a blanket just in scraps of yarn that I had, and so this was a no-brainer for me. I have copious amounts of Cascade 220 just sitting around, and so I figured I would put them to good use. So this is all Cascade 220. All of these colors so far were actually in my Lume sweater, and so I am putting the scraps to good use. This pattern is knit on the bias, so you start on the corner and you make increases. It is a free pattern on the Purl Soho website, and it's just in ribbing. And I think it's a really good option if you have some thicker yarns. I know that the 1/2 triangles wrap is really big right now, but if you are not someone who wants to do that in fingering and you don't want to deal with short rows, this is another great way to get a very similar looking pattern with just increases and decreases. So far I'm still increasing. I am I think I just reached the halfway point of how long or how the width of this blanket. And on the outside, you just knit on the right side and purl it on the wrong side, and it just creates a little edge, which I really like that detail. So I am just basically knitting the stripes until the color runs out. I'm currently using Cascade 220. I think this is in Japanese maple, which is such a nice color. I would love to knit sweater in this completely. And yeah, I'm basically just knitting it until I run out of this color of yarn, and then I will switch colors. The one question I have is if I'm going to have enough to do this whole thing in more of a warmer, earthier palette, or if I'll have to pull in some of my cool tone Cascade 220, and I don't have the answer for that yet. But I'm really pleased with the way this is turning out. I would actually love to make one for myself. It has been a really enjoyable knit. It's getting really long now, a lot of stitches, and obviously there's going to be a lot more. I am doing this on my Knit Picks needles because I've got the longest cords in that. And this is in a 6mm. The original pattern, I think, was it a fingering weight yarn? Fingering or sport weight yarn. And I am just using the measurements that they have to be able to make this to a width and length. And that's the nice thing about this being on the bias. You start so small that you could really use any size needle, any weight of yarn, and just knit until you reach the measurements that you need, and it would work out fine. So if you are in any way familiar with the mending patterns, I think that you could do this very easily. And I think this blanket pattern is really cute and fun, and you could also make it for a baby blanket. You could also just make it smaller, and that would work out really well. I would also just recommend swatching or starting off and paying attention, as you just want your blanket to be able to drape in the way that you want. And I'm really happy with this drape. I have used Cascade 220 enough that I really like it. I know I like it in a 5 or a 6mm needle, so I went for the 6 to save my hands a little bit, but I think the drape of this is perfect. And I don't think I have anything else to say about this, but I would definitely consider this my first blanket I've ever made. I would definitely consider making another one, maybe talk to me when it's done. But so far I just love staring at it, just like a nice big piece of fabric that I created. There's nothing better. This next project I have had on my list since it came out, I think, late last year, and I had actually applied to be a tester on it and didn't get selected, and then summer came and I've had the yarn sitting in stash for a while now, and it is the Miles shirt jacket by Ozetta. And I am in the early stages of it, but it is also knit on 6mm needles, and you knit the whole back panel and then you pick up for the front panel. So that's what I'm doing now, is one of the front panels. This is a shirt jacket, and I just really love the construction of it. Same as the last pattern, I am definitely too big in gauge, and I don't want a fabric or Blouse Ozetta pattern, this pattern that I was doing. My gauge is too big, and I knew that going in. I did not want a fabric denser than this, so I think that this density is perfect. I am making this in Alaflas Lopi, by the way. No? That's not the one, is it? I always mess the Lopis up. The unspun Lopi. I'm doing it in the charcoal color because that's what they had in stock. I actually really wanted a light gray, kind of like this, but a little more speckly for this. And if I like this pattern, I'll probably make another one in that color, but unspun yarn has been so hot lately that I could not get it. And so you hold 2 of these together, but this isn't actually the recommended yarn. She recommends the Manchios Lopi, which when held double has a slightly smaller gauge than this does. So a lot of other people have used this Lopi from Istax, but some have gotten gauge and some haven't, and I was not able to with a density of fabric that I liked. So I am making the first size, and I am just trying it on as I go, and so far so good. I would ordinarily be, I think, the 3rd size in this pattern, so I'm definitely sizing down, but because my stitches are so big, I think we're gonna be fine. And laying it over myself, it does seem like it's hitting the spots that it should, and that's pre-blocking, and I know that this is going to grow a little bit. So I'm just keeping an eye on it. I think it'll be fine, and if I have to rip it back, that's my own fault, but I am trying to make little calculations along the way and amend it to how it needs to be. I am really loving this pattern. I think that this detail along the neckline is really clever and really intentional. I think the way that she creates her shoulders is really interesting, and I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about how it works on this pattern, but how it works with this pattern looks fantastic. I'm new, I haven't tried it yet. I don't want to give away the secret though. So if you're familiar with Ozetta patterns, you'll probably know what I'm talking about, but the way that she structures the back to have a bit of a slope on it, I feel like creates a bit of a puckering on this one. Oh, it seems to have laid flat now, especially when I first blocked it, it puckered a little bit. Whereas I don't think that we're gonna have the same problem with this one, just because it's so much denser and much more forgiving fabric. But this one I think is gonna be a decent knit. Lots of purling, but this is really a product knit for me. I really want the final product of this. I think it's fantastic. I've almost bought one for myself before that looks exactly like this. And the miracle of knitting, you can go into a store and be like, I could make that for less. So that is what I'm trying to do. I am a little worried. When I first bought the yarn, I didn't realize I was holding a double. And so I don't remember if I bought it knowing, like, with the right yardage. So I might have half as much yarn as I need. We will see. I was looking at what other people used when they used this yarn, and I seem to have enough. I think I'll have enough, but there's a slight chance that I'll need more. So hopefully I'm not in the same position that I was with this, that I am with my other tank top. And I have enough stupid yarn for this, but I really need to stop doing this to myself because it's stressing me out. So I'm just praying that I have enough yarn for this. And I hope I will. And I think I can also save some of the length as well. So hopefully that will only benefit me. And it has been such a delight to like do an afternoon of knitting and have a whole back panel done, to actually feel like progress is being made. Has been lovely, but this is definitely too hot to be working on in the current weather. We had a few cool days and that's where I worked on this, but it's a little too scratchy to be working on in the dead of summer for my taste, at least. So I've got one more to show you that is brand new. I only cast it on 2 days ago, I think, 2 days ago. And it is with some new yarn as well. What should I talk about first, the yarn or the pattern? Let's do the yarn first. I ended up going to the Kitchener Yarn Festival. That's not what it's called, but that's what I'm calling it. Kitchener is a town in Ontario. It's actually the 10th biggest in Canada, even though it is not very big, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it is pretty local to me. And so I received a message from someone being like, hey, I know you weren't planning to go to this, but a little birdie told me that there was going to be Sandisgarn line from one of the vendors, and if you want to stop in, you might be able to find the yarn that you've been looking for. And if you don't know, I've been working on a tank top and I've ran out of yarn for it, and I've had people offer to send it to me, but I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet. I have a local yarn store working on getting it in for me, and I could probably order online, but I just don't want to spend the money on it. And I'm trying not to spend money on yarn in general. So I was like, I don't want to go to this thing because I don't want to spend money on yarn, but I really want to get my hands on that Lena. Well, I ended up selling some of my yarn to give myself about $100 of budget to go to this thing and have a good time. I was feeling a bit down and I'd been pretty sick all that week. It had been a crazy week and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go. So I went down there and I paid my $8 to get in, and it was lovely. It was actually one of the biggest yarn crawls I have ever been to. They had filled 2 auditoriums with vendors of yarn. A lot of them were very local, and none of them had any Sandisgarn. So I don't know what they were talking about. They obviously thought they had intel that they did not. I was there pretty early in the day as well, and there was literally not a single vendor that sold Sandisgarn. So it was a mix of local yarn makers, but also yarn shops from Ontario that were just kind of selling some of their, set up a pop-up shop. So it was a really good mix of yarn. You could get affordable, you could get very luxury yarn, and yeah, but no Sandisgarn. So I went and had a good time anyway, and thank you for everyone that came up and said hi. I was not at all expecting anyone to recognize me, but I had about, I think, 7 of you that came up and said hello. I watch your podcast, which was wild to me. So thank you. I had so much fun learning what you are all knitting for and buying for. A lot of people doing the Stephen West make-along, so I hope you found the perfect yarn for that. And yeah, I hope to meet more people at yarn shows. That was a very surreal experience for me. I had went kind of with my hair up, feeling a little more like I wanted to blend in and not make, not that I ever want to not blend in, but I didn't feel like I was prepared to meet people. So if I was a little shy, I was just a little taken off guard. So thank you, and I really appreciate you. But I ended up making 2 yarn purchases, and this first one is what I'm making this sweater out of. So they had Wellington fibres there, and they're out of Elora, Ontario. And I ended up getting 2 of this yarn. This is in a sport weight. I would say a pretty thin sport weight compared to the Jagger spun. I think this looks a little thinner to me. Yeah, definitely thinner. So, and I think the yardage reflects more a fingering weight, yeah. So this is 332 yards and this is 400 yards. So I think that this is definitely either a very thin sport or more of a fingering weight. And this is in the color Wellington Natural Gray. It's 30% mohair and 70% wool. And this company definitely specializes in wool mohair blends. And this was just the one that I liked most. It's got a little bit more tooth to it. It has a really lovely natural feel. It smells really good. It has like little twigs and stuff in it. You can tell that it's a very homegrown family business type yarn. And I just love that about it. I had never seen them out and about, but I will definitely be looking out for them in the future. They're not too far from me, and I would love to check out their farm. I think they're going to be in Paris, and I'm hoping to go to that yarn festival as well. It's right before my birthday, so I can treat myself a little bit. It'll also be after my exams, so it's in the beautiful after period, the period that I am looking forward to. But yes, Wellington fibres, nice and Canadian. And so I had initially thought that I would get this and I would find a mohair one day and make maybe a Lento with it. Seems like everyone and their mother is making a Lento. I wanted it on the fad. And the idea behind the Lento was this miraculous sweater that you just need 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn and the equivalent in mohair, and you can make a full sweater. And I thought that sounds beautiful. That's what I'm going to plan for. And I got this, and then I saw online someone was selling this yarn. And so this yarn is also from Wellington fibres, but it is a different base. So, and it looks a lot older, like the label's different, but this is 75% mohair and 25% wool. It's 2-ply and it's in the shade Wellington Silver. And they were already caked up when I had received them. So I got 4 of these, which is the equivalent of the other. And when I saw mohair online, it was hard to tell from the photos that they had posted. I thought it was going to be more of a fingering weight mohair, but this is a substantial mohair. And so by some miracle, these are almost exactly the same color. They're not listed as the same color, but they're extremely similar. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna make a sweater out of these. So it's because this is 30-70 and this is 30-70 the other way. I know that they're not the same weight, but it's kind of like it's 50-50 mohair wool. And to be honest, it doesn't feel mohairy. Neither of them do. This one is definitely softer, the one with more mohair content, but it doesn't feel like mohair. And I think that these are really cool and unique yarns. And I would definitely, I mean, as long as they wear well, I would buy either one of them again. This was, I think, $23 for this, for each one. And then I had picked up these guys for less than 10 bucks a skein. So I think good deals overall. Weird fluke of nature that both of these were together. I happened to get within a day of each other. I thrifted this the day after the festival. Someone was just selling it in my local area and I was like, yes, please. So that solved my problem and I immediately cast on just a Raglan sweater that I am self-drafting myself. So it is pretty new. I have just done a doubled collar on the top, and I am doing a simple raglan. It has short rows in the back, and I am doing it on 5.5 millimeter needles, and I really like the gauge. So my plan is to hopefully be able to finish the yoke with, I'm kind of measuring it based on these guys. These guys I have 4 of, and the other one I have 2 of, and they should be around the same yardage. So I'm hoping to get the whole yoke done with one of these, and if I can, I know that I'm in a good place, because usually if I can get the yoke done with one, the body done with another, and then each of the sleeves get one, I am in a good place for yarn. If I can't get the whole yoke done with one of these, then I know I need to play it a little bit carefully. I'll probably do enough of the body, then switch to the sleeves, and then come back to the body, try and conserve the yarn a little bit. But I think that this sweater is going to be really beautiful. It has that silvery quality, a little bit of sheen, but more so it's got like a brownie base to it. It's like a warmer tone gray, and I am just loving the speed at which this is working up, the simplicity of the stitch, and the beauty. It is exactly what I needed. It's such a nice palette cleanser. Now that I've finished the ribbing, I barely ever have to purl again, and it's gonna be beautiful. And I think that this is gonna fly by, and I am just loving the experience of knitting on it. I would highly recommend a simple raglan if you are just looking for a palette cleanser, because this is exactly what I needed in this moment. It is just in the round. It is perfect. It is very, very similar to the Pippin sweater by the Knit Purl Girl, except there's way less pearls. So I'm happy about that. It's kind of what I need at the moment, and it's on thicker needles. Perfect. For the ribbing, I went down to a 5 millimeter. I probably could have went down to a 4.5 to be honest, but yeah, I am really, really enjoying the way that that's knitting up. I'm basically just gonna do the body until I'm happy with it, and the rest of it's pretty easy from there. So I'm not following a particular pattern for it, but the Lento is very similar to it, and so is the cozy sweater. There is a Raglan from Espace Tricot that is a free sweater that is the same gauge as the Lento. So if you're looking for a free alternative, they suggest using drops air instead of a fingering and a mohair. So just keep that in mind. They have different suggested yarns, so it is a different sweater altogether. But I think if you want a free alternative, that is a good one. And I also mentioned that in my last video about gift knitting. I did get one other yarn while I was at the Kitchener festival, and that's it for my whips, by the way. So this last one, I believe, was from a vendor that was a yarn store. This wasn't their yarn, but I saw the color of it and I was immediately obsessed, and it is this yarn here. It is from the brand Amble Wandering Souls. It's a conscious blend of washable merino wool, alpaca, and recycled nylon. So it's very much like a sock yarn. It is a fingering weight. It is in this stunning dark rust color. Just love it. It is in the color Nutkin. Cool. It is 70% wool, 20% alpaca, and 10% nylon, and it's Peruvian wool, which is probably why I love it so much. I find I'm always reaching towards Peruvian wools. I just think that they're so squishy and gorgeous. And this is surprisingly, they say you can machine wash it on a gentle cycle. And for it not being superwash, I'm quite surprised that they'd have that on their label. I don't think I will be machine washing this, but good to know. Seems like a cool little yarn. It is only 355 yards for the fingering, so definitely won't go as long of a way. And I'm kind of 2 minds of this. I had initially thought that it may work with this mohair, but I think the tones are too different. Maybe. I think I'm going to test a swatch with it, and if that's the case, I might make a Lento after all with this. But if not, I might make a slip over with it. I don't know if I'm going to hold it single or if I'll still seek out a mohair, but I think a slip over in this color would look so good, and I could wear it on top of white or cream colored turtlenecks, or even black ones if I was feeling a little moody. But I was just so obsessed with this color, I could not pass it up. It was on the pricier side. I think it came out to $30 a skein, which is not something I usually like to spend for wool, but the color, the atmosphere just got away from me. I knew I had $100 going in, so I knew that I could get both of these, and that is the main reason I only got 2 of them, because they are priced little buggers, but really cool. And I haven't done a lot of research on this brand yet, but I should. They were established by the Fibre Co. It's by the Fibre Co. I feel like I know that name. Established in 2003. Anyway, I'll definitely look that website up, and I am excited to knit with this yarn. I think that's all I have to say. I would definitely recommend that festival if you are in the area. I know they do it every year. It's put on by the KW Knitters Guild, which I've been looking a little bit into. I don't know if that would be something I'm interested in trying. I'm looking forward to a lot more fall knits. I'm really inspired by a lot of the trends lately in the quarter zip sweaters, lots of stripes we're seeing, and we're seeing lots and lots of cables. So if I can get my mojo back to be able to want to do more complicated knits, I would love to attempt some of those. And then of course I shared my holiday knitting plans in my last video, so I'm sure that will take over my knitting life for quite a while. If you are still with me, let me know in the comments what you're knitting on, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing couple weeks ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye!